England, in the closing years of the 1530s, was a kingdom filled with uncertainty, where the wishes of one man could reshape the lives of everyone around him. King Henry VIII had already become famous across Europe for his 6 marriages, political upheaval, and determination to secure a male heir. His royal court glittered with gold, music, and lavish feasts. Yet beneath the elegant appearance lay a world of rivalry, whispers, and constant fear. One careless mistake could cost a noble their fortune, freedom, or even their life. Into this dangerous world stepped a young woman named Catherine Howard, whose beauty would soon capture the attention of the most powerful king in England. Catherine was born into the influential Howard family, one of England's oldest noble houses. Despite her noble blood, her childhood was far from luxurious. She spent much of her youth in the household of her step-grandmother, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, where dozens of young relatives and servants lived together under surprisingly relaxed supervision. Unlike many noble girls who received careful instruction in languages, politics, and religion, Catherine's education was limited. Instead, she grew into a lively, cheerful, and charming young woman whose greatest strengths were her warmth, graceful manners, and striking appearance. As Catherine matured, she was chosen to serve as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Anne of Cleves, Henry VIII's 4th wife. The position placed her directly inside the magnificent royal court, where every noble hoped to gain the king's favor. Henry, now aging and suffering from painful health problems, was immediately drawn to Catherine's youth and energy. Compared to the politically arranged marriage he shared with Anne, Catherine seemed vibrant and full of life. The king showered her with gifts, jewels, and attention, while courtiers quickly noticed the growing affection between them. Few realized that Catherine carried private memories from her earlier years' experiences that seemed safely buried but would eventually return to threaten everything she was about to gain. The wedding of King Henry VIII and Catherine Howard transformed the atmosphere of the English court almost overnight. After years of disappointment, political conflict, and failed marriages, the king appeared happier than he had been in a long time. He proudly referred to Catherine as his rose without a thorn, believing he had finally found the loving and loyal queen he had always desired. Courtiers praised her beauty, musicians filled the royal palaces with joyful performances, and grand banquets celebrated the beginning of what many hoped would be a happier chapter for the Tudor dynasty. Although Catherine was still very young, she suddenly found herself wearing the crown of England and living in magnificent palaces that few people could even imagine. Life as queen brought extraordinary privilege. Catherine received expensive gowns woven from velvet and silk, glittering necklaces decorated with pearls and diamonds, and luxurious apartments filled with rich furnishings. Everywhere she traveled, servants attended to her every need. Noblemen bowed before her, ladies curtsied in her presence, and foreign ambassadors carefully observed every word she spoke. Yet beneath the splendor, Catherine quickly discovered that being queen demanded far more than simply looking graceful. Every smile, conversation, and decision was watched by dozens of curious eyes, while every action could become the subject of gossip throughout the kingdom. Henry VIII's affection for his young wife was obvious to everyone. Despite suffering from painful leg ulcers and declining health, the king made every effort to keep Catherine close to him. He delighted in presenting her with costly gifts and organizing lavish entertainments in her honor. However, not everyone welcomed the new queen. Rival noble families envied her rapid rise, while experienced courtiers quietly questioned whether someone so young possessed the wisdom required to survive England's dangerous political world. Feeling isolated among strangers, Catherine relied increasingly on familiar attendants from her past for comfort and companionship. Without realizing it, those trusted connections would soon become the greatest threat to her crown, as old relationships and hidden secrets slowly began to follow her into the heart of the royal court. As the excitement surrounding Catherine Howard's coronation settled into the routine of court life, the shadows of her past slowly began to reappear. The English court was a place where secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. Servants listened behind doors, rival nobles exchanged rumors in quiet corners, and ambitious officials searched constantly for weaknesses they could use to gain power. Catherine had entered the palace, believing she could leave her earlier life behind forever, but memories from her youth refused to remain buried. People who had known her before she became queen still lived in England, and some now held positions close enough to the royal household to become dangerous. Among those from Catherine's past was Francis Dereham, who claimed they had once shared a serious romantic relationship before her marriage to King Henry VIII. Their familiarity was well known within the household where Catherine had grown up, and several former companions could testify about what they had witnessed. Instead of distancing herself from people connected to those years, Catherine appointed Dereham to a position within her household. Historians believe this decision proved to be one of the greatest mistakes of her life, as it brought someone with intimate knowledge of her past directly into the Queen's inner circle. At the same time, Catherine developed a close friendship with Thomas Culpeper, a handsome gentleman of the King's Privy Chamber and one of Henry VIII's trusted favorites. Their private meetings, often arranged with the help of Lady Jane Rochford, attracted attention among observant members of the court. Although historians continued to debate the true nature of their relationship, the secrecy surrounding these encounters created suspicion. In the Tudor court, appearances alone could destroy reputations. Before long, whispers reached powerful ears. Archbishop Thomas Cranmer received information suggesting that Catherine had concealed relationships before marrying the king and might still be behaving improperly. Rather than confronting the queen openly, Cranmer quietly ordered an investigation. Witnesses were questioned in secret, old acquaintances were located, and every rumor was carefully examined. Unaware of the growing inquiry, Catherine continued her royal duties, never realizing that the walls of the palace were slowly closing around her, and that her reign as queen was approaching its tragic end. The investigation that had begun in secret soon erupted into a full-scale crisis. In the autumn of 1541, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer gathered the testimonies collected from Catherine, Howard's former companions, and presented the accusations to King Henry VIII. At first, the king refused to believe them. He had adored Catherine, calling her his greatest joy after years of disappointment and failed marriages. The idea that his young queen might have hidden intimate relationships before their marriage or worse, betrayed him afterwards seemed impossible. Hoping the claims were nothing more than malicious gossip, Henry ordered that every detail be carefully examined before any judgment was made. Royal officials quickly questioned members of Catherine's household. One witness led investigators to another, and soon, a web of confessions began to emerge. Former servants described Catherine's youthful relationships while she lived in the household of the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk. Francis Dereham admitted that he and Catherine had once been closely involved before she became queen, although he insisted their relationship had ended. Even more alarming to the king were reports about Catherine's secret meetings with Thomas Culpeper. Under intense interrogation, Culpeper acknowledged meeting the queen privately on several occasions, though he denied committing adultery. Lady Jane Rochford, who had arranged many of these meetings, was also arrested and questioned. Each new testimony shattered Henry's confidence. The king, who had once showered Catherine with jewels and affection, now withdrew in heartbreak and anger. According to contemporary accounts, he isolated himself for long periods, devastated by what he believed was a profound betrayal. Meanwhile, Catherine desperately searched for a chance to explain herself. Stories tell of her attempting to reach Henry, hoping to plead for mercy, but she was kept under strict guard and never allowed to face him. Instead of reconciliation, she was stripped of her authority and placed under confinement while Parliament prepared legal proceedings. The glittering life she had enjoyed as England's queen vanished almost overnight, replaced by silence, fear, and the growing certainty that the crown she had worn with such pride could no longer protect her. From the deadly justice of the Tudor court, confined under heavy guard, Catherine Howard entered the darkest chapter of her life. The luxurious palaces that had once echoed with music, laughter, and royal celebrations were replaced by locked rooms, silent corridors, and constant surveillance. Every privilege she had enjoyed as queen disappeared almost instantly. Her servants were dismissed or questioned, trusted companions were arrested, and the people who had once competed for her favor now avoided speaking her name. Isolated from the outside world, Catherine had no way of knowing whether the king would show mercy or whether every passing day was bringing her closer to death. As the investigation continued, the men accused alongside her faced their own terrible fates. Francis Dereham was convicted of high treason after evidence of his previous relationship with Catherine was presented before the court. In December 1541, he was executed by the brutal method reserved for traitors. Thomas Culpeper, although spared the full punishment, was sentenced to death by beheading. Their execution sent a chilling message throughout England that the king intended to deal harshly with anyone connected to the scandal. When news of their deaths reached Catherine, any remaining hope that Henry might forgive her began to disappear. Meanwhile, members of Parliament passed a bill declaring that a queen who concealed past sexual relationships before marriage to the king could be found guilty of treason. The law was directed specifically at Catherine's case, leaving her with almost no possibility of escape. She was transferred to the Tower of London, where generations of prisoners had waited for the same dreadful fate. Every sunrise reminded her that another day had passed without a pardon. Later accounts, though not confirmed by every contemporary source, claim that Catherine spent part of her final days practicing how to place her head upon the execution block so she could meet death with dignity. Whether entirely true or shaped by later storytellers, the image has become one of the most haunting symbols of her final imprisonment. Long before the executioner's axe was raised, Catherine had already endured the agony of losing her crown, her reputation, her friends, and any hope of a future. For the young queen, the endless waiting proved to be a punishment almost as terrifying as death itself. On the morning of February 13, 1542, the long wait finally came to an end. Inside the ancient walls of the Tower of London, Catherine Howard prepared for the final moments of her short life. She was only a young woman, yet the crown that had once elevated her above almost everyone in England could no longer shield her. from the sentence that had been passed. Guards escorted her through the cold winter air toward the execution site, where a small crowd of officials and witnesses had gathered in solemn silence. There would be no grand ceremony, only the swift conclusion of a tragedy that had unfolded within the Tudor court. Contemporary accounts describe Catherine as calm and composed as she approached the scaffold, dressed in dark clothing suitable for the occasion. She addressed those present with a brief statement, acknowledging the justice of the law while asking for God's mercy upon her soul. She also expressed loyalty to King Henry VIII, a gesture that reflected both the customs of the time and the reality that no final appeal remained. Whether her words came from genuine conviction, resignation, or a desire to meet death with dignity can never be known with certainty. After finishing her final prayer, Catherine knelt before the execution block. The executioner prepared his axe, and within moments a single powerful blow ended her life. Those who witnessed the execution observed the silence that followed, marking the end of England's fifth queen under Henry VIII. Her body was respectfully buried inside the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula within the Tower grounds, where it was laid to rest near Anne Boleyn, another of Henry's wives who had met the same fate just a few years earlier. Catherine Howard's story remains one of the most tragic episodes of the Tudor era. Rising from a relatively modest noble upbringing to become Queen of England, she seemed to possess everything wealth and power could offer. Yet, in the dangerous world of Henry VIII's court, favor could vanish as quickly as it appeared. Her downfall serves as a lasting reminder that behind the splendor of the Tudor monarchy lay fear, political intrigue, and unforgiving justice. For Catherine, the days of uncertainty before her execution were a torment that many believed proved even more painful than death itself.